We are broadcasting at a critical historical juncture where the gap between Washington political rhetoric and its military actions on the ground has never been wider. On one hand, President Donald Trump expressed optimism to ABC News, suggesting a potential extension of the Pakistani brokered ceasefire and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. On the other hand, the tactical reality tells a story of aggressive escalation, on high-stakes missile clash in the Sea of Oman and the tragic deaths of Iranian personnel with Iran due to unexploded Western munitions. To contextualize these fast-breaking developments across the geopolitical, legal, and economic spectrum, we will be joined by a panel of experts to dissect this situation. All this and more shortly. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special coverage, which we focus on Iran's war and also the developments in Iran. Of course, to dissect this very difficult situation and fast developing situation, we are joined live by Dr. Hossein Fatni, expert in international law and U.S. politics from the University of Pennsylvania. Hello there, Professor, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
We're also honored to be joined by Mr. Mohammad Krissasi, geopolitical observer and financial analyst. He joins us from New York. Hello there, sir, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invite, and again, my regards specifically to my brother Hussein.
Thank you. And we're also joined via phone call by Dr. Ifan Raja, geopolitical analyst and media professional, who joins us live from London. Hello there, Professor Raja, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Thank you. All right, let's start the debate with you, Dr. Fatni. If we come to look at this developing and fast developing situation, we see President Donald Trump, he just told ABC News that peace with Iran is better than a military victory, yet the Pentagon continues to sanction kinetic operations, leading to the Iranian cruise missile strike on the MSC Sariska in the Sea of Oman. From the perspective of U.S. domestic politics and constitutional law, how do we explain this profound disconnect between executive rhetoric and active naval escalation?
Well, let's see, what did the war achieve? Well, so far, in terms of positive aspects to the US, frankly, nothing really. We may have some who argue that it dismantled the Iranian nuclear infrastructure. However, we still really don't know exactly what was dismantled. But what we know for sure is that this war has caused so much damage to the United States, to Iran, and to the countries in the region. To the US, we have casualties among the American soldiers who have died. In addition to that, you can really think also of the economic disaster that been inflicted on the US, on the economy of the US, in terms of the economic inflation, the prices of gas, the perception that the American people now have about their leadership, that even those who have been very gung-ho about the presidency of Donald Trump now are turning against him. As a matter of fact, his polls are very decreasing in numbers to the point where he's really getting horrible polls. In addition to that, the fact that this war was declared in total violation of the US Constitution. The US Constitution makes it very clear that when it comes to war, it should be declared by Congress, because the founding fathers of this country, knowing too well the significance of war and its impact on society, they would not leave such a significant phenomenon or event to one person to declare it, but to Congress. It may be in case of emergency for the president to have such a power, but the president has to come back to Congress to seek authorization. And that really did not happen after 60 days. The president, as a matter of fact, did not go back to Congress. And that's really, to a certain extent, what pushed him to seek this peaceful resolution of the dispute. And the other casualty is really the impact on the perception of the US as a superpower, as a country among US allies, among also the global society, how the US perceived in terms of its position globally, especially when it comes to the respect of the international rules and regulation, international law. Add to that, we look at the casualties among the Gulf countries and the suffering that many of these countries have went through in terms of the people who have died, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms also of figuring out how their future alliance really would work. Will they still be relying on the United States? Will they start thinking of other alliances? So there are so many decisions that really need to be done and to be decided. And we also don't really forget also the suffering of the Iranian people. Regardless of how we think of the Iranian regime and the Iranian government, the Iranian people also have suffered as a result of this war. So really, in a sense, when you really think use of force, if it's not really used in the right context, it never really works. Sometimes it is more of a liability than an asset. And I really think this is really an example where the use of force was really more of a liability than an asset in every aspect.
Thank you, Dr. Fatni, for all these insights. Of course, it's not just the executive or the political problem here. Mr. Mohammed Krasasi, let's just look at the maritime insurance and the global shipping indices. Following the strike on the MSC Ceasefire, Donald Trump is claiming that the Strait of Hormuz could reopen next week and there is ceasefire extension. Yet the waters are actively burning. As a financial analyst, how exposed is the Western economy to these sudden spikes in maritime insecurity? And is the market buying Trump's optimism here?
Well, I will try to make an assessment of what you just said regarding the exposure to maritime, the maritime exposure of what you just said, and also if I may say, the problem that you are facing is that the strike, and you said to my brother Hussein, the strike on the MSC Sarika is a key distinction that financial markets are currently making physical insecurity in the Strait of Hormuz, and it remains very elevated. But markets are pricing a lower probability of a sustaining disruption to the global trade flow. Why? Because the vessel was hit while docked in Iraq Qasr port, underscoring that commercial shipping remain very vulnerable despite ongoing diplomatic discussion. And the maritime insurance, to be more in details of your question, the maritime insurance and shipping indicator appear significantly more caution than equity market. War risk premium for Hormuz transit remain far above the pre-conflict level, with industry estimates suggesting costs could remain multiple times higher even if the Strait formally reopened. The insurance underwriter continued to cite the mines that are there, the missile threat, the drone attacks, and uncertainty over freedom of navigation is a major concern. And this is why we are talking about right now, regarding the last number that I have, an increase of more than 45%, which is enormous. And this, how can you express the Western exposure in terms of economic? Because after what I said, the insurance and the problem, the threat of Hormuz, you have the energy price. Hossein talked about it a little bit. You have the energy price is roughly 1/5 of the global oil and trade normally transit, and we said many times, through Hormuz. The disruption, can quickly increase also, as I said before, on the liquefied gas, and the supply chain, of course, is affected. So the financial market is bringing all this weight of uncertainty, and the sustained maritime disruption will likely increase inflation expectation, complicate the central bank policy, which we talked about it during the last show, and the pressure on the corporate profit margin. That's it. Now, how can I say, if the margin buying Trump optimism, because it was a part of your question, well, the evidence suggests that partially, yes, but not completely. Why? Because on one hand, the oil price fell, and equity, like today, the oil price, I was checking before we come online on the show, the price, the Brent price I'm talking is about between $8 and $90. But Hormuz investor, they don't see the diplomatic signal that's sending Trump. And this, of course, increase the volatility of the market and the uncertainty of the financial market. Now we can say that some vessels are still reporting going through, but the traffic is not what is supposed to be, and the maritime insurer continue to price substantial residual risk on the top of the country risk. And this attack on the strike on the MSC Sarika, it reinforced the concern that ceasefire arrangement remain very fragile, as you can see with the development of today and the deprogramation. And I should say, to conclude, that a financial analyst will likely conclude that equity and oil market are currently assigning meaningful probability to Trump's claim that access through Hormuz will improve under a ceasefire extension, but maritime risk market are far less convinced. And we know that the insurance company, they are not, looking at anything at their profit, at the risk, and they will do the contract and will do the underwriting of the insurance policy, will take this in consideration.
Absolutely. And let me welcome now Dr. Yvonne Ridley, Scotland's Workers' Party leader, also former journalist and royal correspondent, a renowned British author as well. She joins us live from Glasgow, Scotland. Hello there, ma'am, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So, Dr. Yvonne Ridley, we were talking about the contradictions facing this crisis. On the one hand, we see Donald Trump, expressing optimism, but then at the let's say field level or the ground level, the reality is different. Now, my question as a political leader, Dr. Ivan, in the UK, how do you read Trump's populist rhetoric of ending endless wars when his administration simultaneously maintains a naval posture that risks a catastrophic regional blowout? How is the European, perhaps working class, reacting to the reality that their energy security is being gambled to protect an aggressive ally in the Middle East, as we were discussing with Mr. Mohammed Krisasi now?
Well, Trump promises peace but delivers a floating powder keg. It is classic Washington, really, when you judge this regime by its performance, talking like a pacifist 1 minute while acting like a pirate. Trump keeps saying America first, but risks World War III for regional allies like Israel and those in the Gulf like the UAE. European workers are paying the price for all this reckless gambling. Millions can't heat their homes because leaders choose geopolitics over cheap gas. The working class communities are being fleeced to fund foreign fortresses. And, I keep on talking about the van driver who goes to fill up his tank. It is increasing at such an alarming rate, and it really is hitting people in the pocket, from our van driver to the housewife who goes out and sees food prices rise up because delivery is going up because of fuel prices. It's fuel, food, all the basic essentials. So the working classes are really being affected by this escalating game that Trump is playing.
Amazing. And still, we're getting now analysis and echoes from London, this time with Dr. Irfan Raja. Dr. Irfan Raja, if we come to look at the reports being circulated, for example, in Fars News, which confirms that back channel message exchanges between Tehran and Washington have been paused to draft a preliminary memorandum of understanding. Yet, the mainstream Western media consistently portrays these channels as running smoothly and normally. As a media professional yourself, how does this systematic spin distort public understanding of the conflict? And why is the West hiding the fact that Iran is negotiating from a position of sovereign strength?
Thank you. A very important question. I must say, that's my personal opinion. Once this war will over, and we all wish and pray for it, then at some point you will see leaked documents and diaries of those involved in negotiations will become public, and everybody will know a single line message that America has used peace talks as a weapon of war. Because you see, the particularly corporate media in America and the West, they always are behind selling wars. And we all know what happened in Iraq, what happened in other wars, weapon of mass destruction, and the 45 minutes stories published in the Western media. So it's basically a battle of narrative. So you see, in the beginning of this war on Iran, the media outlets, they were selling this war by manufacturing, preparing the public for it. And just a couple of days ago, the Fox, they mentioned a headline by Washington Post: "Finished the job." It was an article. Now, finish the job means that someone is like echo that they are doing a service to humanity. That this job is finished. Finish what? This is a illegal war, and is like one of the crimes against humanity. And this is how the media sections, law sections of the media, what they do is it's all about emotional framing, dehumanization, and like selective reporting to justify conflicts. And we have a history of this, particularly in the Middle East. Now we look into just recently how media condition regime change from Venezuela to Iran, and they started as a regime change, but they failed. So it's like it's been happening since long. The Iran is framed as like an existential threat for Israel, and like they're mentioning it as excess of evil, mullahs, anti-Western hardliners, dictatorials, undemocratic, and especially presenting Iran as threat to global peace. So with this, basically, Western officials and media, they work together, and they often downplay Iran's negotiation leverage to maintain maximum diplomatic pressure, to protect economic interests and avoid showing their weakness in public negotiations. So it is like it's just a game, a skillfully designed, planned to convince Western public at home that, look, we have threat out there, and if we shouldn't go for it, it will be a threat for our existence, and to convince people abroad, like in the global south and elsewhere, that your life are becoming hardened, just not because of us, because of Iranians are, the what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz and all that. So in brief, while the Iranian leadership view these negotiations as diplomatic and military maneuver, as a demonstration of sovereign strength, the Western governments oppositely, like the Western governments and the media broadly frame Tehran's engagement as reluctant concessions to severe economic and military press. So this has all been designed, just to cover up their yet another illegal war, whilst an ongoing genocide in Gaza, ongoing attacks on another sovereign nation, Lebanon, and all that.
Amazing. Thank you for all those insights. Now, let's move to Dr. Hussein Fatni. And here I would like to hark back to the Trump-Xi summit and the imperial priorities for the United States. So technically, Dr. Hussein Fatni, during Donald Trump's recent visit to Beijing, heavy opposition emerged from within the American foreign policy and intelligence establishment itself. So critiques argue that the US is sacrificing its long-term strategic rivalry with China by bleeding its resources in the Middle East on the one hand. So is the American political class beginning to finally realize that Washington is waging a losing war exclusively to protect Israeli interests over its own national security?
There is some who advance such a narrative that this war would not have happened without Netanyahu nudging Trump towards the war. And I'm not trying to dismiss that. There is no question that there is that. But we can also argue that the US has its own reasons. There is that history between the United States and Iran. The appetite of the US for oil has always been there. And that appetite, especially for Donald Trump, as a matter of fact, the fact that he went to Venezuela, and he went to Venezuela just because of oil. And that's really what, as a matter of fact, encouraged him to go to Iran, and what also made it very easy for Mr. Netanyahu to convince him, because he thought that he can go to Iran and it will be very easy for him I don't think he I don't think he calculated his strategy. And we're really talking here about a president who's not going to really listen to advisors or listen to people who will tell him, look, Iran is not Venezuela. And I think that is really what to a certain extent really happened. I think he thought that he would go and he will go in and out, and that's it. You can celebrate the victory, and that's what happened. So there is that aspect. There is also the aspect of fighting terrorism, okay? That is really important for the United States, not just for Mr. Trump, but for other presidents as well, because there is always that label that Iran is a source of terrorism, promotes terrorism in the Middle East and elsewhere. So that does exist. The other thing also, the fact that the Gulf countries have always relied on the United States, adding to that relationship that they have with Iran, this relationship that is very ambivalent relationship. And the fact that Trump has established a very good rapport with the leadership of the Gulf, in his own mind thought that this is really the opportunity to endear myself to those leaders. Why not? So this war, in a sense, was really an occasion for him to strengthen that relationship without knowing that really Iran is being engaged in a war with Iran is not really that easy. So that's why it was very easy to convince Trump to go to war. I don't think, as I stated, and many people do agree, I don't think really he thought of the consequences. It's in that context now, you would just see that he put on his brakes on this war. He started thinking of a way to get out of this war. And he even turned on his friend Netanyahu, and in various phone conversations, he disagreed with him, and to the point that yesterday he had a very tough conversation with Netanyahu, even forced him to stop the war and stop bombing Beirut, and even using some harsh words vis-a-vis Netanyahu. And it really tells you that Trump realized that he has to stop this war no matter what. The fact is now Americans, or especially some of his allies, are very concerned and worried that whatever peace agreement that he's going to get with Iran may not really be probably as good as the agreement that the JCPOA that Obama had with Iran in 2015, which, by the way, Trump has canceled and repealed. Will Trump get a better deal from Iran? So this is really now what this president is really facing. So in a sense, he is really forced to stop this war because, as we mentioned, as my colleague, Mr. Sassi, emphasized, his base is turning against him. We're heading towards an election. All the polls show that his party, which, by the way, the Republican Party now is really called Trump Party, are, by any measure, are really losing. The prediction is that they will not, they will definitely lose the House. I don't know about the Senate, but they will definitely lose the House. And that's really going to be a very significant problem for Trump, because he will be very handicapped in terms of implementing his policies for the next 2 years or half of his presidency. And that's really very significant for him. It's in that context now, it's going to be really tough for him not to have a peace deal with Iran. What kind of peace deal? In a sense, Iran will have some kind of significant power. One thing that I would like to really add here, that both Iran and the United States are really talking about freedom in the Strait of Hormuz and arguing for that. And both countries, which is very strange, both countries have not ratified the Treaty on the Law of the Sea, which basically regulates passage through straitways. So in a sense, it's very bizarre that here we have two countries engaged in a war and both of them have not ratified the only convention on the law on law of the sea, which regulates pathways on these waters.
Perfect. Very clear ideas, Dr. Hossein Fatni. And now, since you mentioned Mr. Mohammed Chris Sassi, let me bring him back here to the discussion. Mr. Mohammed Chris Sassi, it seems that Donald Trump's problems are endless. And one of them, for example, think tanks in Washington are deeply alarmed that the war with Iran is pushing China and the global South closer together. So does Trump's attempt to use the Middle East conflict as a leverage against President Xi Jinping actually accelerate global de-dollarization, effectively turning the Trump-Xi summit into a masterclass in American economic self-sabotage?
Well, to answer your question, I have to distinguish analytically what's going on here. Number one, you have, I should say in form of question, does the Iran conflict increase incentive for China and part of the global South, as you said, to deepen economic cooperation outside the US-led institution? And the second one is, does that necessarily mean a rapid erosion of the dollar dominance or a self-defeating outcome for the United States? The answer for the first one is probably, or plausibly, I should say, yes. The answer for the second one is much less clear. You have here a strategic dynamic. Many Washington policy analysts argue that prolonged conflict in the Middle East can create opportunities for China to present itself as a more predictable economic partner, particularly when you see among the energy importing and non-aligned state, several think tank assessments have been noted that the Iran war has complicated Washington diplomatic position ahead of Trump's engagement, while simultaneously increasing China's relevance as a mediator in energy. And on a personal note, while you talk about the voyage of Trump to China, it was a disaster. The first thing Xi Jinping did was to talk about Taiwan, and the message was very clear to Mr. Trump, and he didn't take all the contract that they're supposed to have with the 500 Boeing, so on and so forth. That, just a personal point here to not find not. But, to get back to the China's position is really strengthening by being more forceful by several factors. The first one is, in my point of view, and it's my analysis, it's only my analysis, is my personal point of view, it's remain the China position. Why? It's the several factors. One of them is it remains a major purchaser of Iranian energy. Iran and China is about the last number that I have, 55%. So China cannot stay on the side looking at this chaotic mess that Trump is creating. The second thing is China also possesses substantial influence over regional supply chain. China is the first manufacturer of the world. And now you have many global South governments that are seeking greater strategic autonomy rather than a strict alignment with either Washington or even when Beijing. But the diversification is there. America doesn't have the stronghold like they used to have. Now, as a result, the attempt to answer your question, the attempt to use Middle East pressure as a leverage against Xi Jinping from China may not automatically translate into a bargaining power if Beijing is simultaneously viewed as indispensable to any durable settlement. One of the reasons, as I said, is China cannot stay on the sidewalk looking that, this economy is going to be affected by this chaotic disturbance that what Mr. Trump is doing. And as I said, also, it's not only China, it's all Asia too, in fact. And now to answer and to conclude on the question of the de-dollarization question, whoever claims that the conflict is triggering the hand of the dollar, well, this is not strongly supported by mainstream financial evidence. Why? Because historically, geopolitically, crises often give a strength to the demand for dollar denominated. Even for China, they have a lot of bond in China, and they cannot just say, we'll stop it, and then you are going to sell everything. No, it's going to take time. Now, the key point on phases for the dollarization, you have to look at the deep capital market, the legal institution, the liquidity, as I just was saying, and of course the central bank credibility, because you have to have the availability of the asset.
Clear, Mr. Mohammed Kristasi. Thank you so much. And since you mentioned Asia being affected, well, we know that the entire world that is being affected by this economic crisis. And here I would like to focus a little bit on Europe. Back to you, Dr. Yvonne Ridley. The European political elite is caught in a vice, actually, between Washington's demands and their own economic decline. So, seeing the outcomes of the Trump-Xi summit, is it becoming clear to European leaders that the US is ready to sink its own empire and, by extension, Europe's economy just to sustain the Zionist regional hegemony?
Yes, Washington is happily sinking its own ship despite its rivals. Ursula von der Leyen and the Brussels bureaucrats are acting like loyal musicians playing on the deck of the sinking Titanic. The Trump-Xi summit proved Washington cares about dominance, not its allies' bank accounts. Europe's economy, for instance, has been sacrificed on the altar of Middle Eastern hegemony. It is a masterclass in economic suicide for the benefit of a foreign state. And the European elites are sacrificing their citizens' futures to please a crumbling empire. And by the elites, I mean the Brussels bureaucrats, the unelected leadership of the European Union, like the European Commission, who dictate economic and foreign policy. So, and also, let's not forget the NATO-aligned national leaders, prime ministers and presidents, such as those in Britain, France, and Germany, who are prioritizing transatlantic military alliances over their own domestic economic health. Our factories are closing while we bail out this crumbling empire. And, the future is certainly not looking bright in Europe at all.
Thank you, Dr. Yvonne. And now moving on to how Europe or the Western world is trying to frame this war. Dr. Raja, Western media heavily framed Trump's visit to China as a position of strength. Yet, independent geopolitical analysts note that Beijing held all the cards because Washington is militarily bogged down in the Persian Gulf. How does the Western press manufacture consent for a failing imperial foreign policy while completely obscuring the rise of a multipolar reality?
I agree. Like the Chinese has upper hand, of course, in all those visits, and so far in all talks, debates relating the war on Iran. You see, Western press coverage of wars, especially, is deeply founded on Orientalism. Like the West is a good guy, and the rest is, the bad guy. And this is very much visible in Hollywood films. a series of films showing the American soldiers are, helping ordinary people in Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq. They are distributing sweets to children in Afghanistan, and such kind of presentation, like presenting their soldiers not as invaders but as liberators. So the West has always been presented as liberator, a custodian of human rights, democracy, and that is rooted in, you rightly put it up, like the propaganda model by Professor Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman. And that very much aligns with the corporate media interest and with their reporting, and not only current war, but all the wars, because the America is over $1 trillion military industrial complex, and their business is war is their business. If you look into the top documentaries made by the British journalist John Pilger, or many others, many others, like the independent investigative journalists, and it tells us like West has always been presented as a good guy, someone who walks into, goes abroad to liberate women, to bring democracy and all that, while completely ignoring what is going on in their own home. That is why we have, as your guests, honorable guests, are saying, what is going on in America, as Dr. Ridley just pointed out, how the lives of ordinary people, how they are affecting by everyday rise in prices, and all these troubles just because of war. And so, for example, there's a binary of worthy and unworthy actors. So on one side, we the and same goes to their worthy victims and unworthy victims. So far, none of the mainstream media is talking about the Iranians, how the bombings, everyday bombing and carpet bombing in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iran, in Yemen, what is happening to the ordinary people is not a news, is not important, because they're unworthy. The worthy are, like, worthy victims are the people in Israel. Even they nobody's hitting. It's just one, the sky is covered up with like missiles and lots of stories. So in brief, like, this is in historical blackness, is historical context, and that is why you will see the rise of global South, or the expansion of
Right.
BRICS coalition. Yeah, it is always frequently decontextualized or portrays entirely as a threat to the rule-based order.
Great.
So that is it. Is framing. It's all about
Thank
framing.
you, Dr. Irfan Raja. And since you mentioned the bombing in Lebanon, I would like to move to this specific point with you, Dr. Hussein Fatni. If we speak about the talks, despite the talks of agreements, I mean, the Zionist occupation continues to bomb southern Lebanon, leveling ancient heritage sites like Tyre and displacing thousands of civilians. Now, when the UN Security Council meets in an emergency session and merely repeats the standard formula of Israel's right to self-defense, what remains of the structural credibility of international law under American stewardship?
Well, look, definitely there is really an issue of credibility when it comes to the US and international law, especially when we look at this war and the way it was declared. It was declared in violation of international law. It was declared in violation even of the US Constitution, okay? But we should also know that all members of the United Nations are responsible for the protection and implementation of international law. When it comes to the United States, the US has helped establish the various institutions post World War II. But unfortunately, this relationship between the US and international law has its ups and downs, okay? And what we really see now, these are some of the negative aspect of these relationships. This relationship you can also see elsewhere. We can see also the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia. We can see violation happening elsewhere, okay? The one element that is so important, so when it comes to the violation of international law, many factors are essential. There is also the leadership that is really involved. When you really look throughout history, you may find some presidents like Carter, like JFK, like who fought and implemented the rule of law. They may have made mistakes, but international law was very important for them. There are leaders who put geopolitics and the interest of the country above. So, unfortunately, this is the part that nations in one way or another have advanced their own national interest at the expense of international law. So we have that reality, but I don't think we can really say specifically with this war. What we can really see, for instance, if we really have to look at the consequences of this war, we have to look at it from a different perspective. I think the perspective that we should really look at, here is the case of Israel. Israel, throughout the years, what really matters for the state of Israel was the support of the United States. It did not really care much about the rest of the institution, the rest of the countries. Now, if you look at this case, the United States was important to Israel because of the support that Israel garners from the American people. But today, anyone who knows about the politics of the United States will tell you, and even the Israelis themselves, even Prime Minister Netanyahu himself will tell you that they are losing the United States. They may have President Trump, but you know, they are losing the American people. They are losing the support of the American people. The Palestinian people now are having more support within the American people than Israel. And that is really the biggest problem for the state of Israel now. And that is really so important and so significant. It's not about international law when it comes to this conflict, is who is really going to win the heart of the American people. And I'll tell you one thing, the Israeli government, Israel has lost that. And guess who can really confess to that? Trump himself is confessing to do that. Congress is confessing to that. AIPAC, the most significant lobby for the Israeli government, is confessing to that.
Very clear.
Now,
Very clear.
it is a liability. Okay?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hussein Fatni. I need to go through a very quick round of questions as we reach the end, and we have barely 4 minutes left. So, Dr. Mohammed Kresasi, still with the topic of Lebanon, Beirut has directly stated that absolute international impunity has actively encouraged the occupation to repeat its crimes. So, from a macroeconomic standpoint, how does this systematic destruction of a sovereign state civilian infrastructure ripple across the broader Mediterranean region, and how long can global markets tolerate this state-sponsored lawlessness?
Well, before I answer the question, I just would have to say one point here.
But very quickly, Mr. Mohammed Kresasi, please.
Very quickly, first of all, I would like to say that in Lebanon, it's also a destruction of Lebanon today. But also, I would like to have a word about the genocide by Israel in Gaza. And factually, they are doing it with the blessing of America because they are the one who are providing the fund and the arms. This being said, and this I really have to say that, the support, the unconditional support of America to Israel, and it's not only from Trump, from the last, for the last 70 years, I should say. Now to come back to the statement attributed to actor in Beirut, to reflect the broader argument often made by government, international organization, and human rights in conflict zone. I don't listen to anything else that Israel have the right to defend himself. But history repeats itself. If you look in 1980, the invasion of Israel on Lebanon, we know how it ended in 2001 and by who. So again, we are going back there. But since I have only 1 minute, I don't want to abuse the time of my colleague to leave them the floor. But, we have to stop talking about international law or regarding the Middle East. Is no law for them. They are quantity negligible for the Occident. With the 4 main Council Security people, member, America, France, England, Russia, 4 of them. They never respected whatever was going on in the Middle East. They didn't care. And who are they? They are 4 countries that were esclavagist, colonialist in a certain way. I want to say that, except for China.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Just like yourself, Mr. Mohammed Kristasi, Dr. Yvonne Ridley has consistently challenged Western institutional hypocrisy. Dr. Yvonne, we see the UK and European governments swiftly condemning actions in Eastern Europe, for example, yet they remain silent or complicit when it comes to the displacement of civilians from Beirut, southern suburbs. We can mention Gaza, like Mr. Mohammed Kristasi was saying. How do we expose this moral bankruptcy to a Western public that is increasingly tired of funding double standards?
Yes, well, I'm glad Dr. Mohammed raised the issue of Gaza because, of course, the ceasefire is supposed to be enforced there, and it never has been. But Western morality is entirely selective and depends on the victim's passport. Although, in a way, I have to correct myself because 2 left-wing content creators from America have actually been blocked from entering the UK today, and the Home Office had revoked their visas. Americans Hassan Piker, who is a Twitch streamer and political commentator, and Yank Yuga, who co-founded a populist show called The Young Turks on YouTube, both were due to speak at a London festival and at the prestigious Oxford Union this week. But the pair have been told that their visas have been revoked because they've criticised a government, not the British government, but they have been banned in Britain for criticising Israel. Piker has come under fire for making pro-Hamas comments, while Yuga has called Israel's actions in Gaza barbaric. So this is a strange turn of events and the ultimate in hypocrisy. You can criticize Britain as much as you want, and you can live quite happily over here criticizing the government. But my God, you criticize Israel and you end up being banned. Shouting about international law in Eastern Europe while remaining silent on Beirut is another pure hypocrisy. Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, and the British establishment have a permanent blind spot for Lebanese civilians. And, we can expose this bankruptcy by highlighting the direct cost to the taxpayer. Working class Westerners are sick of funding bombs while their own schools and hospitals crumble. The public is now waking up to the fact that our foreign policy lacks a basic human conscience.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Yvonne Ridley. And very quickly, Dr. Irfan Raja, let's just look briefly at the language used by prominent Western news outlets regarding the ground incursions in Lebanon. The destruction of entire villages is frequently downplayed as targeted operations. How does this linguistic gymnastics bypass international legal definitions of war crimes? And how can independent media break through this wall of propaganda?
Oh, well, thank you so much. And in briefly, the language is a tool, and I see it as weapon of war. And words are either mass destruction or a source of mass construction. So you see quick examples like in case of Gaza, for example, the often phrases like colony, which is presented as a neighborhood. So you see, as Gaza is presented as a neighborhood, it's not a neighborhood, it's a concentration camp, it's an open air prison. So that is how, it's all about cover up and narrative framing. So the language like active versus passive voice, using passive or voice like terms like clashes occurred, or you can say instead of like just to present victim, who is the victim, and that then they use loaded signifiers, for example words like militant or terrorist or regime. They are chosen just very skillfully, carefully to just to show actors, like terms defense forces, for example. Very briefly, IDF itself, it says that the Israeli Defense Force, well, it's like Israel is not defending, it's invading country one after the other. So this is happening. And the last part, quickly, you asked me whether the independent media break through this wall of propaganda. Yes, of course. Particularly, we are in the age of social media, and you can see there's clearly the fall of this mainstream media narratives. So we have alternative media becoming very powerful, and hopefully that bring good news in like we have more peace journalism rather
Amazing.
than warmongerism. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Irfan Raja. We have to leave it there. So my profound thanks to all our guests, Dr. Hussein Fatni, Mr. Mohammed Krisasi, Dr. Yvonne Ridley, and Dr. Irfan Raja. Thank you all for an exceptionally sharp debate. The breaking updates from the Sea of Oman to the halls of the United Nations leave no room for ambiguity. The structural foundations of Western unipolarity, are fracturing. As our distinguished panel detailed tonight, Washington can no longer mask its active geopolitical self-sabotage with optimistic press statements. While President Donald Trump speaks of peace to ABC News, the reality of American munitions causing destruction on the ground and cruise missiles striking shipping lanes tells a vastly different story. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to our channel. And until next time, have a good one.